Garth
I'm not
gone
bringing
now?
her in yet.
Yeah, Larry.
Oh, actually, I am.
I saw Garth
I'm bringing
taking
everybody
in.
in.
All right. Good evening, everybody. A meeting of the Human Affairs Committee is being called to order at 7 p.m. on July 11th, 2022 in the Automatic Chamber and via Zoom teleconference. The meeting link can be found on the agenda and on the city's website. We're going to start by taking a roll call attendance. So if you are participating by Zoom, please state whether there's anyone in the room with you during this meeting and your reasons for not attending in person, which is required under the right to know law. And I believe that refers to older people, not members of the public. Alderman Clee, take the vote.
I was going to say I couldn't remember my name either, so that's okay.
I just flipped through 3 titles.
Alderwoman at Large Shoshana Kelly.
I'm here.
Alderman at Large Melbourne Moran Jr.
I am present at home. For some reason, I can't change my name. It comes up as my wife's name, even though I've tried. But I'm on dad duty, so I'm babysitting while my wife is out.
Let me see. I'll see, as the meeting goes on, I'll see if I can't change your name.
Thank you.
Okay. Alderwoman at Large Gloria Tibbins.
Here.
Alderman at Large, oh God. Alderman Patricia Clee, clerk, I am here, and Alderman Thomas Lopez.
I'm here.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, we have, everyone is present.
Okay, I see. Also in attendance, we have.
Oh, sorry. Also in attendance, we have Dan Hudson, city engineer online. I apologize, I'm now blinking at everybody.
Chief
Sorry.
Buxton.
I know, I keep thinking that you're part of this. Alderman Derek Tebow, Chief
Jetty.
Buxton.
Alderman Jetty.
Alderman Jetty is also, he's online.
Director
Elizabeth
Sullivan.
is here. I'm sorry?
Director Sullivan.
Director Sullivan is here, Jim McCormick, and, oh my God, isn't this awful? I forgot his name again. I'm so sorry.
Buxton.
Nope, from Urban Development, I'm sorry?
Julian Long.
Julian
Long.
Long, okay, from Urban Development is also here.
All right, so I'm sure our transcriber will get all of that.
Yes.
It's a busy house today. That's great. So we have roll call, and the next item of business is public comment. If anyone is wishing to comment on items we have on our agenda here?
I do not see any, oh, I do. Christie Bethesda, and there's no one from there.
Bethesda is my favorite gaming company.
Bethesda.
Ms. Basada, Reverend Basada, would you like to speak?
Hi, yes, thank you. I just wanted to, first of all, I'm Christy Basada from 12 Nutmeg Drive in Nashua, New Hampshire, Ward 9. I'm also one of the pastors at Main Street United Methodist Church at 154 Main Street. I wanted to thank you for the really thoughtful proposed distribution of the ARPA funding and to continue our emphasis on behalf of GSOP and the Nashua Interfaith Housing Justice Group for particularly emphasizing the $10 million that has been proposed for the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. And I just wanted to say thank you.
Okay. Communications?
Communications from Tim Cummings, Economic Development Director, in regards to ARPA funding framework, additional detailed memo on funds being used.
So the directions say without objection, I should accept this.
And
Last
place
time
on
we
file.
did that, it got very complicated.
No, this is for that.
But without objection, I will accept this communication and place it on file.
That's correct.
See, this is what happens when I follow this.
Director Cummings has joined us as well.
Okay, well, we can have time for a presentation in a moment, I think. Unfinished business,
None?
new business resolutions,
There's none.
new business ordinances,
There is none.
and tabled in committee.
Yes, I'd like to motion to remove from the table the communications from Director Cummings relative to the ARPA funding framework. From Director Cummings, Economic Development Director, relative to the ARPA funding framework. I'd like to motion to approve the communications, or do you want to have the?
Yeah, we should take it off the table first.
Okay, let's take it off the table.
All right, so on the motion to remove from the table the communication that we tabled at our last meeting, is there any, well, all in favor say aye? Aye.
Well, we
Aye.
have to roll
do
call
roll
because
call.
We have to do a roll call,
You
sir.
have
Oh,
to do
I'm sorry,
roll
we
call.
have people online.
Because we do have Alderman at Large, Melbourne Moran online, so.
All right, have at it, clerk.
Okay, let's do this. Alderwoman at Large Shoshana Kelly.
yes.
Alderman at Large Melbourne Moran Jr.
Yes.
Alderwoman at Large Gloria Timmons.
Yes.
Alderman Patricia Clee, can't even get myself straight, and Alderman Thomas Lopez.
Yay.
Okay, we have, let me just make sure this is 1, 2. That's 6 yeas? 6 yeas.
Okay, so without objection, we have removed it from the table. Now, is there a motion?
Yes, I motion to approve the communication submitted by Director Cummings on May 17th, 2022 for the use of ARPA funds as revenue replacement, which will allow for the following initiative projects or equipment to be pursued. $10 million for the Housing Trust Fund, $500,000 for the backup server IT, $850 for fire equipment alarm, $650,000, sorry, $850,000 for the fire equipment alarm, $650,000 for police record management and gate, $600,000 for Main Street study and West Hollis Street study, $1,500,000 for the library park project, $600,000 for the Opticon system, and $200,000 for the ARPA program support, and further request Director Cummings to return to the committee and provide the updates.
All right, so as multiple members of city departments have come, I want to respect their time and offer to let them come and sit at the tables. I also want to check the sense of the board here. I know last time we were specifically focused on the library component of it. I don't think there was any concern about the fire alarm aspects, for example. Alderman Kelly?
I'd like to hear from everybody if they made it out.
Okay.
I think we didn't have any explanation previously. Thank you.
All right, so if individuals wishing to speak on it, Chief Buxton, Director McCormick, if you guys want to come up and have a seat. If I missed anybody, feel free.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If I may, Tim Cummings, Director of Economic Development.
Just waiting for everyone to get seated. All right, feel free to introduce and explain what we're doing here.
Great, thank you. Again, we're here before you this evening as a follow-up to our last meeting where we started the discussion on the usage of the ARPA funds that have come into the city. And at that meeting, there was a request that we have some of the departments join us and provide a little bit more detail in terms of what some of the uses of the funds would be. So in addition to the memo I sent to the committee previously, I wrote an additional memo which hopefully is in your packet that provides a little bit more detail. And what I would suggest, Mr. Chair, if I may, is that we just go one by one through the various items, and we have the various departments represented here, and they could speak to the details. So if I may, the first up is what I will now call a disaster recovery site. And as I've been counseled, no longer refer to it as a quote-unquote backup server. So that is Nick Misevich of the city's IT department who can explain what exactly this request is.
Thank you, Director Cummings. Nick Misevich, Chief Information Officer for City of Nashua. As Director Cummings mentioned, this is to expand the disaster recovery site. If it was simply a backup server, we wouldn't be here. So it's to basically build a second data center elsewhere in the city to provide resiliency in the event of environmental, physical, or a cybersecurity threat. So it will allow the city to continue operating and servicing the constituents in the event of one of those incidents.
And so, Mr. Chair, this would be $500,000. It's 5 stages, servers, switching, storage, fiber optics, and then software upgrades that would comprise of the disaster recovery site.
Any questions? Alderman Moran, I would not be able to see you if you raise your hand, just so you know. All right, assuming no questions, you want to move on to the next item?
Yes, so Mr. Chair, the next up is fire equipment and alarm alerting system. We have the chief with us, and this request is for $850,000.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So along with the proper notification to our fire alarm center, the processing of incidents to responders is of utmost importance. As the city has grown in incidents, Nashua Fire Rescue response on an annual basis has increased dramatically. In the past 12 years, our calls for service have increased by more than 27,000 calls. In 2020, the total was just over 52,000 calls for service. This results in an increased workload not only for our dispatchers, but alarm fatigue for our responders in the individual stations and an unfathomable amount of radio traffic. On an average, the last 5 years, Nashua Fire Rescue transmits 280,572 radio transmissions across the radio system. And that's heard in every one of our facilities 24/7, 365 days a year. The system that we're looking at will integrate with our existing system, our game wall system, as well as our computer-aided dispatch system to fully automate the entire alerting process from the dispatch center to the remote personnel in the firehouses. This integration will improve response times, reduces stress on dispatchers as well as responders through zone-specific alerts. So what that means is if the south end is going to the Pheasant Lane Mall for an incident, the people in the north end aren't listening to the radio traffic that goes along with that, and so on. Likewise for the rest of the stations. So basically, if your facility is not involved in the incident, you won't be alerted to it unless we set the parameters for working incidents and stuff like that. This will allow us to have more accurate incident alerting, provides higher reliability and redundancy in our system, and it produces data to assist with us maintaining our NFPA compliance to standards. In addition, within that $850,000, there's some additional funding. Some of you may remember we had some infrastructure improvement programs for the game wall system that we proposed with some leftover bond money. If you remember when I spoke to that, we were staging, we were doing that in phases, and we were gonna scale the project in and out as needed, depending on the price or the cost of goods. The cost of goods is obviously not coming down in recent times, especially copper. We've seen a dramatic increase, so we have some money in here as well to allow us to accomplish much more of that project, potentially 100% of it, as opposed to having to phase it in.
So I actually have 3 questions. The first, on that last point, I just wanted to clarify that ARPA money is coming in from the federal government. Ultimately, it was derived from taxpayer money going to the federal government. So by including the funding for the last item, which likely would have had to do with bonding or locally generated revenue. We're recovering tax money and using it for purposes to keep local taxpayers from having to fund it through municipal tasks. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Okay. The other two questions I had were a little bit more ranging. The first was with regards to statistics, it sounds like you were describing almost a 50% increase in calls over the past 10 years, if I remember right?
12, yes.
12 years. Were the safe station program calls included in that? Was there a surge or a drop off when the fire department concluded its participation? And did those numbers include specifically fire calls, or did they include 911 calls in general?
So the calls for service are all of our incidents. So for safe stations, in fact, we had developed a system early on in the development of that program where we noted that the person seeking need in the station, by alerting the firehouse, who was already aware of the situation because the person came knocking at the door, we actually removed all of that. We removed all radio traffic because it just, it was unsettling to the person that we were interacting with, and we found it to be counterproductive.
Mm-hmm.
Does that
So
answer
there
your
was
question?
no inflation of numbers at that point. This is really just
Correct.
a general increase in need. And then the last question I wanted to ask was, when you were talking about, you know what, I forgot it, so I'm gonna go with Alderman Kelly, and maybe it'll come back to me.
Okay.
Alderman Kelly?
Oh, you're calling on me?
Mhm.
Okay.
I saw your hand go up before.
Oh, you saw me. Okay, cool.
Okay, I
I'm
saw the general motion, but whatever.
I wasn't jumping. So, excuse me if I'm being dense, but you talked a lot about the needs, and I completely understand that, but what exactly, are we replacing radios? Are we replacing towers? Are we replacing software? I'm not sure I fully understand what is happening.
Mr. Chair, okay?
Yep.
So what this will replace, currently our system in the fire stations, the bell rings, the alarm taps in, it's somewhat of an antiquated system. However, it is tried and true, and you really can't beat it. For us, as I said when I proposed using some of the bonds money to increase the infrastructure of this, you wouldn't want to install that system today because there's much more updated systems, but because we have it tried and true. So 2007, 2008, we had those ice storms. A lot of places couldn't transmit alarms, and they were using cell phone technology, texting, to dispatch actual incidents. In the city of Nashua, we didn't have that problem because we can actually transmit alarms. Basically, a rough idea would be like through a telegram system at the end of the day. So this system that we're looking to do would utilize that technology with the new computer-aided dispatch system that we have using software, and it would integrate the two of them together. One of the problems we currently have is, as I mentioned, our call volume has increased dramatically, and our radio traffic has increased even more than that. So this would isolate, so if your fire station was not responding to an alarm, you would not realize that anything was going on in the system. Some of the problems that we have is, just like if you say live at Clock Tower and the alarms continue to ring in because somebody's pulling them, somebody continues to burn food, eventually you reach a point where you're like, that's probably not an issue, I'm not gonna go anywhere. So you get what we call alarm fatigue. So if you continue to ring the bell a whole bunch of times, I hate to say it, but the men wait to hear if it's actually for them. Whereas under this system, they would know immediately that it is for them. So you would see an increase in response times. You get better data tracking to help us with our NFPA compliance, our ISO ratings and stuff like that. So we'd have the ability to extract data out of the program as well.
If I could follow up, Alderman LeBlanc?
Yep.
Thank you, that was clear, thank you. So you say that integration is where we're headed here. It sounds like because of the antiquated system is a good backup, that you'll continue to be integrated. You wouldn't want to fully become, on the game well system. You want both?
Correct.
Those were my questions. Okay.
I remember mine, but I think I see Dr. Cummings over there too. With regards to segmenting the system, I know that there's a subculture in Nashua that's monitoring police and fire and reporting what's going on in different areas. They would probably lose access to being able to monitor radio transmissions if we did it that way.
No, our radio broadcast through all of the online service that everybody has access to today would remain unchanged. The only time that we would have a change in that is if we were to encrypt some of our systems, which we have no intention of doing.
Right. I could understand with police, particularly in a standoff where you have people narrating it online, it's a little bit awkward. But with fire particularly, citizens generally benefit from having clear information and understanding rather than like, there's definitely a fire over there, it's probably the whole block, and it's like somebody's barbecue. So just looking for clarification on that. Alderman Clee?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And the one thing that I liked about this proposal more than anything was that redundancy. And I know you talked about that second trunk where we only have one now. And if we were to lose that, just as a side, at this point right now, if we were to lose that, we would lose communications from I think you said something about the northwest to the northeast. And we would have that loss. But this it goes over the river. Is that the way it's going to work? It's going to go through the Broad Street Parkway. I think I heard you say that. Or through that area.
Veterans Park.
The Veterans Parkway. I can never get, I still call that Memorial Hospital, so.
Mr. Chair?
Chief Bucks?
Yeah, that is correct. Currently, the main trunk for the north end of the city runs up Main Street, goes underneath the bridge. If we were to have something damage that at the bridge, potentially, the whole north end of the city would be cut off until we could make the repair. And anybody that's done a little bit of work on Main Street knows that that is no easy feat. But by running a loop out the Veterans Memorial Parkway, we would have redundancy, so we wouldn't be so reliant on that. The circuit would just loop back around.
As the ward alderman of that area, I'm very happy to hear that. Thank you.
You took over the bridge? Okay.
No, the north end.
All right. Any other questions from committee members? Director Cummings?
Yes, if I may, I'd like to go somewhat out of schedule here and just skip on down to Opticon system as well. I asked the chief to speak on this specific issue, though I'd note that this actually is more of a citywide use, but I know that this is a project that's near and dear to the chief's heart.
Take it away, Chief, and please feel free to clarify what Opticon is. Because
Yep.
we know, but the public may not.
Yep, so the Opticon system, or the traffic preemption system, is the system the fire apparatus used in the city to turn the lights from red to green in their response flow. Currently within the city, National Fire Rescue are the only ones that have access to the system. In theory, when they made that decision back in the 80s, was it's much easier to maneuver a police vehicle or an ambulance versus a 20-ton fire truck. So we initially installed the system back in the late 80s, early 90s, after a significant incident within the city. And we maintained it pretty well for the first, say, 20 years, but the system is antiquated at this point in time, falling into disrepair. There are several intersections that need attention, and to be quite honest, we're chasing our tail budget-wise with it. There are newer systems out there that we can build off of our current system to upgrade it. And the newer systems also have the technology that we could expand the platform. They have prioritization with them, so we could have the fire apparatus having the highest priority or the emergency responders, and then you could use them within the transit system, say, to keep the buses on time. You could use it when it's snowing out, the DPW could have it to allow them better access to the streets, to clear the streets in a more efficient manner and so forth. The base price that we currently scoped out when Director Cummings reached out to us is just for the fire department to upgrade the system and correct the issues that we have within the city. However, from that point, that would be the nuts and bolts of the system. You would just be expanding it into transit or into DPW, whatever divisions you chose to move it into. So there wouldn't be as much of a cost if we invested money in those other areas.
Okay. And it's worth noting that the Board of Aldermen do not have access to that system, so screaming at us to make it go does not work.
And again, just for the record, that's at $600,000 in an ARPA allocation.
Okay. First, I'm excited about the potential there as much as the update. Alderman Clee?
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. Just for clarification, I did understand, and thank you for saying that it was just for the fire. This $600,000 is just for the fire. And perhaps it would be something that Director Cummings would be able to answer. We could extend this eventually to like AMR ambulance, to if that were what we wanted to do, or to police or someone like that, is that correct?
Public transit, DPW, police, those would all be qualifying vehicles, if you will, that could take advantage of this. I'm not necessarily sure about AMR. We would have to
I know
check
they're
that. The
considered
chief
like a
may know.
private. Would
Mr.
it-
Chair, can I speak to that?
Yeah, Chief Buxton?
So when we had some preliminary meetings, the mayor kind of brought this up. We had some meetings with police, DPW. I don't believe AMR was there, but I'm not positive. And when we had the vendor in speaking to it, it's not really applicable to law enforcement or to ambulances, because if you're driving faster than 35 miles an hour, you're out performing the speed of the system. Therefore, they don't normally give access. Most metropolitan or communities that have this system are more likely to use it with transit, the snow plows and stuff like that, in addition to the fire department.
Yeah, I think people probably are excited about seeing snow get moving faster. Alderman Clee, you have a
Just,
follow-up?
yeah, just a quick follow-up. Just for clarification, thank you very much for that. So it's actually because of the speed of these particular vehicles going 35 miles per hour, they would get there before the light could actually be triggered and changed. Is that correct? That's perfect. Thank you so much.
All right, Director Cummings.
Yes, if there's no other questions on that, I will move to the next item. And so the next item is a police request. It's a record management, and I want to just express the regrets of the police chief. He couldn't be here this evening. He's on vacation, but I did have a conversation with him and the deputy chief, and they actually wrote up a very thorough narrative, and I'm just going to read it for the record. And I think this narrative does a great job in terms of comprehensively addressing any questions. It says the current system is approaching its end of life. There is no new security software updates, which in turn will put the police department at risk with criminal justice data in CJIS compliance. That technology was built in the 1990s with very limited ability to interact with federal, state, or local databases for criminal justice. As we integrate more and more with other CJI sources, and we need more capable and secure systems to prevent our cities and nationwide data, the National Police consumes and shares with other agencies nationwide. The purpose of this project is to procure, implement a new software package that provides the Nashua Police with a fully integrated computer-aided dispatch and record management system with a base security that supports full breadth of all police operations. The goal is to accomplish this with a combination of commercial off-the-shelf functionality and interfaces with the existing Nashua Police systems as well as external systems. The objective of the new system would be to provide the Nashua Police with an integrated solution that fosters data sharing, accessibility, interoperability between all facets of law enforcement, including outside agencies. The proposed solution will allow a degree of adaptability in terms of modification, expansion, and ensures the Nashua Police's ability to remain relevant, responsive to evolving organizational needs. The Nashua Police Department is requesting the funding to cover the costs associated with the design, building, implementation, and maintenance of a fully integrated computer-aided dispatch and records management and management information system and mobile data computing, along with evidence inventory and criminal case tracking for legal prosecutions. It will also have photo imaging systems to include application software, operation systems, software, hardware, equipment, and all required peripheral and integrated services to serve the Nashua Police Department.
Do any committee members would like to ask the letter some questions? Alderman Kelly.
I'm not going to ask the letter questions, but I would like a written copy of that for the record, please.
That it's in your communication, actually. So it's on the memo I submitted and part of the agenda.
It's the same as what's in our packet.
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
No,
That
that'll
was
help our
in addition
transcriber
to-
too, so it's the same as in the agenda.
Okay.
Okay. Next item?
Yes, so the next item is, I'm gonna skip over Main Street and go to West Hollis Street because participating via Zoom is City Engineer Hudson, who can speak to the West Hollis Street project.
Engineer
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Dan Hudson, City Engineer. So what we decided to do is complete a corridor study of West Hollis Street. The area of focus is from Riverside Street to the Hollis Town Line. Very busy corridor, lots of residential development. We received complaints over the years about trouble accessing the corridor. And then also we desire to improve safety for bicycles and pedestrians. There was a fatality along the corridor a few years ago. So we want to study near and long-term solutions to calm traffic and provide additional accommodation. This study was highly ranked by the Capital Improvement Program. So I'd be happy to address any questions about what we're seeking to do.
And if I may, Mr. Chair, in addition to the West Hollis Street, we also have the Main Street engineering study, and what that is that would be the beginning of looking to develop a design to narrow Main Street permanently. As we all know, the temporary condition that's out there is only for 3 years, and if it's something that the community would like to do more on a long-term basis, you need to have the design in hand, and this would start that initiative. This both studies are submitted at $600,000, and I want to just make sure it was clear that the police record management was submitted for $650,000. That also included a gate, which I didn't touch upon, but just so folks know, the gate that's currently up over by the police headquarters is at its end of life. They want to replace the fence and the gate in that area, and this would just replace the perimeter gate that's currently up. So I just wanted to make sure I was clear on that.
Oh, yeah, I don't think anyone here will take offense.
Oh, God.
Engineer Hudson, this is specifically West Hollis, not East Hollis side?
Correct, yeah, it's from Riverside out to Hollis.
Okay, I know okay, so it's also on the other side of the highway. I know there's definitely some concerns about East Hollis in terms of the intersection that we keep redesigning with, like, you solve one problem, you create others, and then the potential extension of the Heritage Trail, so this is gonna be well away from that. Alderman Jettie, do you have any questions, since that likely be in your ward?
No.
Okay.
No, I have no questions. I fully support this. We've been waiting for this study for a number of years.
I knew that was coming.
And Engineer Hudson mentioned a fatality within the past few years. Actually, this past Saturday night, there was a serious motorcycle accident on West Hollis Street. So there are a lot of problems. There's been a lot of increase in traffic because of the increased development of housing. And so this, and every time we try to ask for something to be done, we keep getting the answer that we need. First we need a study to find out, how to best deal with the increased traffic, to see, what solutions are available to us, if any. So, this study is of prime importance to the people in my ward. Thank you.
Okay. Alderman Kelly?
Thank you. So completely supportive of both of these things. Obviously, I'm a downtown business owner. I think my one question was around the pricing of it. Most of the times we see a study come in at like $60,000, $70,000, and we're talking about over $500,000. Can you give us some insight into that?
Yeah, happy to. So the West, I'll speak to the Main Street one first, and then I'll speak to the West Hollis Street. So studies particularly differ depending on the level of community engagement that is going to occur. Specifically for the Main Street one, we want to make sure we have a robust and healthy community engagement budget set aside. So that's one of the drivers as to why it's so high. But then in addition to that, we are going to be looking to make sure that robust study leads us to a preferred alternative. And so when you have a preferred alternative, you're going to have a scope of work that is typically higher than what you'd see in just a traditional planning study that is at a very high level. We're gonna have, and it's written up in your memo here, that's gonna say that this engineering study is going to identify near and long-term measures to improve accommodation of pedestrian safety and design a complete street for multimodal transportation. The study will determine existing conditions and existing environmental resources. Stakeholder engagement will occur over a period of time to develop a need and purpose statement, along with design standards. This would be used to develop and evaluate and vet alternatives, typically 3. The goal will be to come out of this study and identify a proposal to proceed with preliminary engineering design. This study area is from Concord, Amherst, Main Street down to East and West Hollis Street. So I don't know what the construction costs are going to be for a project like this, but if it's somewhere in the order of a magnitude of $15 to $20 million of a construction project price, your design cost is going to be somewhere between $1 to $1.5 million, and a couple $100,000 upfront in the early phases is not unexpected. That couple $100,000 would then lead you to do some of the more concrete design, which is what I refer to as preliminary engineering, and that will lead you to then final design. That will give you the construction documents that would actually you'd execute on a project. That is, that will be over $1 million worth of construction, a design cost.
Follow-up?
Yes. Thank you. So it sounds like because of the more robust study, when we get to design, we'll be further ahead than we would in some of these other planning and studies that we've done in the past.
That's correct. And I would suggest for West Hollis Street, exact same type of thing will occur. You might not see as much community engagement, but you're looking at, between the two, I would suggest about $300,000 for each study.
Okay, thank you.
I mean, if I was gonna try to figure out how to fix Canal Street, Amherst, and Concord, I won't have $1 million too. Alderman Cleve?
Thank you. This is, might be somewhat unrelated, but I always look at some of the times that we do this preliminary work, because it also helps us if we want to go forward with trying to get grants. So somebody like Pamela can say, we've done this study, this is showing what our need is, and it helps her to be able to apply for grants. Is that one of the benefits of doing something like this?
If I may, Mr. Chair?
Yeah.
Yes, and in fact, the verbiage that was chosen for this was verbiage specifically that would allow us to actually tap into other resources, because that would be the goal that we would be looking for both studies.
Thank you so much for thinking that way. Appreciate it.
Okay. No, without speaking for Alderman Jettie, I would imagine the study having to manage such factors as Nashua High South getting on and off, or getting opening and closing, and any games at the Conway Arena, or whatever's going on at the Y, all while most of the drivers coming into that area have to be looking at the sun. It's going to be a pretty big project, and there definitely are a lot of partners to consult with. Any further questions on the committee?
I don't see it. But,
Alderman Tebow.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This might be a bigger question than just this piece of it, but and I know I believe I know what the answer is, but I want to make sure that it's understood. During the budget sessions, a lot of times things came up where, why don't we just take ARPA funds and throw it here and throw it there? And when I look at these projects, I believe they're all good. I'm probably going to support the whole thing. But at the end of the day, when you go back to your constituents and say, yeah, we're going to spend $600,000 on a couple of design projects that may or may not happen. Why don't we just get that ARPA money to the taxes? Because that's what we heard, right? To reduce our taxes. Can you just explain why we're not able to do that, and what we can do with the ARPA funds and what we can't, please?
Yes, if I may. So specifically, all the proposals before you are not operational. And the worst thing you could do financially for this community or any other municipality is to use one-time source of funds for operational costs. Because inevitably what will happen is, after this one-time plug of funds, all you're doing is kicking the can and putting a structural gap in your budget that then the taxpayers will potentially have to fill later on down the line, and that would only exacerbate your situation. So the guidance that was given very early on to everyone is to look at this as one-time monies, for capital type of investments or capital type of improvements that you'd like to have done. And that's a best practice recommended by the Government Finance Managers Association, and has been articulated through all the IRS regulations that come out through Treasury.
Great, thank you, I appreciate that.
Next item?
And so, yes, next item would be the library park project, which we have both Director McCormick and Director Sullivan here. This is at $1.5 million. This is a project that is near and dear to me because I heard a lot from the community a year ago this time about how much the community wanted to see the plaza between 14 Court Street and the library improved. There was money sitting aside at one time a year or two ago that did not make it all the way to the final appropriation bill that was passed due to the fiscal constraints that we are all dealing with. So this seemed to make like a lot of sense in terms of trying to advance a community priority with, again, a one-time infusion of funding. But I'll leave my comments there and hand it off to Director Sullivan and Director McCormick.
Great, thank you. Alderman Lopez, with your permission.
Go ahead.
Thanks. I'm really glad to be here to talk about this. I'm going to start by talking about the impact on the library, and then Director Sullivan will fill in the bits that I miss. This project will address a significant number of problems that citizens face when they visit the library. Currently, the walkway from the public parking lot to our front doors is not it's not an accessible walkway, so that it's not in compliance with ADA. There also, in the 50 years since that plaza was constructed, there's been significant shifts in the ground, the drainage is poor, there's erosion along that walkway, which creates an injury hazard. There is no supply of water or power to the grassy side of that plaza, so a good example would be the outdoor concert that we had on Thursday night, or the Pride Festival that happened on the 25th. In order to provide power to performers, we have to drape extension cords from the one outdoor outlet across the walkway. On Thursday night, we tried to plug 2 things into that outlet, and we tripped the outlet. So the food truck that was there had to set up a generator, which did not really help with the guitar performer that we had. This project will also remove the defunct fountain, which has not functioned for 4 years. The Board of Trustees chose not to repair that again for the second time in its life. That cost for the motor, the last time we replaced that, was around $9,000. And the masonry for that fountain has also failed, and that cost just seemed too high. This project also replaces all of the lighting on the plaza. Right now, most of the plaza is being lit by the fixtures that are on the library building. Some of those are old enough that they use mercury vapor bulbs, which we are no longer able to purchase because they are considered hazardous waste. It also will address the lack of irrigation on the grassy side of that plaza, so the grass can thrive and grow, and so the kids aren't sitting on dead grass and anthills while they're at our outdoor story times. We did buy yoga mats for them. It also addresses a number of aging, old, and some sick trees that need to be removed. And I think it will address a number of the very valid constituent concerns about the general look of disrepair of our plaza. It's not a very inviting space for families or members of the public to use. It's difficult to program things there. So instead of active use of that space, it's mostly empty or is being used in a fashion we all would probably prefer not happen. And Director Sullivan, did I miss anything?
No, Mr. Chair, just if I could offer a few additional comments. I think Director McCormick spoke well to the needs statement for this project. And I also just want to point out that part of the intent here is to proactively plan for and simultaneously enhance this area as we approach the riverfront project and those improvements that will be done directly adjacent to this including the Spruce Street Connector Transportation Alternatives Project that may come at some time. And generally, this is a piece of the puzzle to enhance this section, this critical portion of the downtown community. I do just want to emphasize very briefly that this project has already seen substantial investment from the community, not just in this form of financial resources to actually get this to a 70% design, but also in the form of lots of community engagement and stakeholder involvement in actually coming to a final preferred design alternative that you see within the materials presented in the memorandum this evening. And so we're happy to be able to present an idea and a concept that's fully prepared for construction, albeit with some tweaks needed to the actual numbers within the construction budget as the memorandum reflects. We'll be able to answer any questions or maybe this evening. I did include some of the details of the phases of the project within the memo. And to be clear, this request will certainly accommodate the requirements of phase 1 and possibly some of the elements of phase 2 as well. We do have some potential reductions in the budget that we can discuss, but certainly phase 1 will be a priority of this $1.5 million that's being requested this evening. Happy to answer any questions, but if there are specific questions about the design, hopefully the visuals within your packet will be helpful for you to take a look at.
I appreciate that, Director Sullivan and McCormick, especially the attention to the safety of the stairs and the area. Those stairs are dangerous in the wintertime. And I know there will be some questions about the fountain. I will quote Director McCormick, it's over 9,000. And there's no plan to replace that with any other different models, it's just removal?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
Chairman.
Any additional questions, Alderman Kelly?
Thank you, and thank you for coming in to speak about this project. I was the one that had most of the questions on this, and I remember when we did the design on it. I think you did a great job of explaining, the phases here and reminding me of where we were. My questions previous meeting were more around, I think this is a great project, but multiple people have come to me about the library building needing a lot of support. What I have heard is that that's not quite ready for funding yet, that you haven't even started design, is that correct? Or study?
Yes, that's correct. So the board financed a facilities assessment project, and that has just begun. So the first site visit was on June 22nd. We are expecting a report on that at the October meeting of the Board of Trustees. And that will outline for us improvements that are needed for all of the mechanical systems, the building envelope, plumbing, electricity, including lighting, and there'll be an architectural component as well related to use of the space in the building.
Director Sullivan looked like he wanted to, and then I had a follow-up.
Just briefly,
He was
sorry.
like, can I?
And I was going to say, I don't need to speak to that. I think this is inherent, but although this project is assigned to the library, I would urge folks to start thinking about this as a downtown project more generally. This is really the creation of or revitalization of an existing green space that will be for broader community usage. And certainly we recognize a direct connection to the library property, of course. But I believe that as a destination within the community core, this is going to serve a much larger demographic and user group than just those that are using the library on a daily basis. I view this as a much larger community park effort.
And I just had a quick follow-up.
Alderman Kelly.
Thank you, and I agree with that. Obviously, in my office, I can see this plaza, so I completely understand. And the playground was something that I was really strongly behind because there's just nothing in the downtown area. Lighting and those things, we're going to be doing energy efficient lighting, I'm hoping. Yes.
Yes.
Heads were shaking, yes.
Yes.
Okay. That was my
You
question.
have to narrate for the transcriptionist.
Yes.
And I would just add that it's not just a downtown project, because I hear frequently, oh, everybody's spending all money in the downtown, like the whole city comes there, come on. Alderman Timmons.
Oh, thank you, finally.
Yeah, I saw you, sorry.
A lot of you guys already answered my questions, but however, I support this because I'm excited about it, really excited about it. I do have a question about the parking, and them there a lot. Can you kind of talk about that? And the playground area is really nice. I'm looking at the layout here, but where would people be parking? What part of that would that be? Right here, and just way over there.
I'm happy to
Go
answer,
ahead.
Mr. Chair. Just for a point of clarification, the only parking adjustments proposed with this plan are 2 new accessible parking spaces. You can actually see those along the Court Street side of the project. Relative to the playground and its usage, we anticipated the existing parking lot directly adjacent to the library, the larger lot, would be the primary lot used for folks that are going to be using that area.
Okay. And one other question on the parking, to follow up on that, is would there be a cost for the parking?
For
Still.
which,
I mean, the parking to use the library, because right now people have to pay to use the library. And that's been a problem with a lot of people saying, well, I don't go there because I have to pay a fee. So can you elaborate on that?
I'd be happy to answer briefly, and perhaps Director Cummings might want to speak
Oh,
to
no,
this
no,
as well.
please. No, Director Sullivan, it's all you.
He's rubbing his hands together over there to answer.
I'm just
as I
sitting here
take this one.
silently.
And the simple answer is, and so Director Cummings will have to chime in, but there are no changes to the fee structure proposed as part of this modification. But I will ask Director Cummings to perhaps chime in on this based on his wealth of institutional experience with this issue.
Would you please comment?
Oh, the bane of my existence. Again, for the record, Tim Cummings, Director of Economic Development, that happens to have the parking department under his purview. I will say that there is no changes at this time for the parking available in the area. There would still be the same parking fee structure.
For clarification purposes, is every single one of those spaces metered?
I would have to double check. I mean, I would think
Yeah.
yes, in the library lot is, but I guess what I will say is the city has a very unique relationship with 30 Temple Street, which is not paid for parking. And because we actually allow 30 Temple Street usage of some of the city's parking assets, you can use 30 Temple Street, which is not paid for parking. Now, you can't do that during certain hours, but during non-business hours, you could use that at no charge.
Alderman Clayton?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Director McCormick, thank you. I know you responded to my email not too long ago about the envelope. My residents in Jackson Falls are looking upon your building as needing to be power washed. And I'm bringing this up because it's not something we can just do because of the, I want to say crumbling of the mortar and so on.
Below the side of the building.
And actually, it was damaged from doing power washing, if I'm not mistaken. Is that correct?
No, there has not been any power washing done since I've been there.
Okay.
So the damage is just age and vegetation.
Okay,
But Alderman Clee, you are correct. Actually, the public health building, we did power washing on that brick building, and that did cause some leakage into the building, and it caused additional cost that we had to take on to repoint the brick because of the power washing there.
which is one of the reasons why the city is not taking on that particular issue. And I want to thank Alderwoman Kelly for having brought this up to have you come here to ask about the study that we've actually already funded versus putting the money into this. Both areas need to be done. Director Sullivan made a good comment about that. It's more of community space, not just the library space, and the library itself should be done separately. You made a comment, and I'm sorry, I'm off a little bit on this, but you made a comment that you've already done one phase of that, the other study. Is that correct?
Yes.
And you said something about June something, you already met on that?
So June 22nd, there was a site visit by the engineers and the architects, and the masons were there.
Okay.
So the next site visit will be purely architectural. They've also arranged to meet with Doria Brown about energy goals for the city so that those can be incorporated. And I think we all know that Ms. Brown is also works well with Pamela Davies to identify cost savings or other opportunities.
And I appreciate all that, and the only reason why I've kind of veered from that is I have had a lot of constituents calling me about your building and so on. We see on Facebook about the outside of it, and I think Alderwoman Kelly kind of mentioned that, but my constituents see your other side, and it's been bothersome to them, and they're afraid we're losing our building. So I just wanted to be very clear up there that we are in fact working on that. It has not been ignored. The study has started and we're moving forward. So thank you to you and thank you, Director Cummings, for all that you've done as well.
I have two quick questions, Alderman Kelly. Director McCormick, first, the sidewalking that leads to the library, is that also up for review? Because some of that's pretty old.
The sidewalk along Court
The
Street?
edge of Court Street that heads towards Main Street?
No, there are no sidewalk improvements included.
Okay, but there would be curb cuts put in for the more accessible parking spaces?
Correct.
Okay, and then my other question is there any kind of improvements to security in that back area? You know, that fellow who keeps trying to spray paint his pine trees?
I believe you're asking, would there be additional cameras installed? That's not part of the plan currently. That would be under the purview of the facility assessment, so I would expect some recommendations to come from that.
Okay, good. I would definitely appreciate that because those pine trees I'm referring to are extremely offensive to some populations.
Yes.
Yeah.
Alderman Kelly?
Thank you. I'm a little bit off topic, but on the parking study. I don't know if there's
Director
anyone
Cummings is
here who
happy
has
to
ever
answer
talked
all
about
questions.
parking in the library. But I know that we were holding on that because we were doing the parking study. Where are we with that?
Yes, actually, we got, so it's broken down into 2 or 3 phases, and actually I can say that we got the first draft of the parking study, phase 1, on existing conditions, submitted, I want to say the end of last week. I haven't looked at it yet myself, but the parking committee that, you know, the ad hoc steering group that has gotten together to help steer the project, I believe we'll be getting that copy of that study sometime in the next week or so, and we'll be moving that along. Ideally, we'll have the complete study done sometime, I would say this summer. I mean, you know, so I would say end of July, August timeframe at the latest.
Thanks for indulging me. I know it's not specific to the plaza part, but
No,
someone brought it up, so.
An important topic, definitely.
Thank you.
Director McCormick, anything to add or any final comments?
Alderman Tebow?
Or Alderman Tebow? Thank you. Co-chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is probably my favorite project, and I'm not saying that because Director McCormick's my constituent. But I love the library. You know, my kids are there often, even as they get older. You know, they were there today, actually. So I love going to the library. I would add another floor to it. Don't say that. Don't put that on Facebook or anything. But my question is, and this may be more for Director Sullivan, but as you do the outside, we do all these different projects out there, will there be any opportunity to do anything that'll generate revenue to the city?
Yeah, the parking.
Or will everything be free outside of the parking? Do you want?
I'm happy to.
Okay, yeah.
I'm happy to take it. The objective of creating this new community space is to ensure that it remains accessible to the public. And I think in the interest of doing that equitably, there's no proposal to charge any kinds of fees for any of these facilities that I'm aware of. But Director Cummings will continue to rake in the cash in the parking lot next door. And, but no, not for any of the improvements proposed here are we anticipating charging any fees that I'm aware of.
Great. Thank you.
I appreciate that, and Alderman Tebow's fiscal focus. But I also think the library is one of those amenities in a city that you really need to make sure there's accessibility for, and that there's a lot of community engagement. And I want to give Director McCormick and the library staff credit for that, because while Alderman Tebow is right, it's a great facility and we could add a third floor, that definitely could have gone a different way, because over the last 15 years or so, library utilization has declined, and it's only through really effective and innovative leadership that it's such a useful space today. I mean, it wasn't too long ago that all of that lower floor was just stacks of books that people aren't really consuming now, and now it's a hub of a lot of different community activities.
Yeah.
Alderman Clay?
Thank you, and seeing we're off track, I want to add to this comment that what Alderman Lopez had just said. I get the newsletter. I share that with my constituents. There are a lot of activities that I don't think people realize are going on, from reading to different types of things that are going on there. And thank you so much for all that you're doing and your volunteers and so on that are working so hard. It is important, and as you pointed out, it's not just a place to go and check out a book. It's a place of activity and community, so thank you.
Great, thank you.
I would be remiss if I didn't plug the big job fair event happening next month that the library is partnering with. So August 17th, anybody who's looking for work or any employers trying to hire. Director Cummings, did you want to move on?
Yeah.
Oh, and Director Sullivan, were you trying to move on, or should we check with Director Sullivan?
I was trying to move on, so
Director Sullivan.
I defer.
Director Sullivan, no
I'll be
pressure.
very brief. I would be remiss if I did not mention the efforts of former Director Sarah Marchant on this project as well. She worked tremendously hard with Director McCormick to bring this forward. And I'll be happy, hopefully in the event that this gets funded at some level, to send her the text or the email or give her a call about moving it forward. But she put a tremendous amount of sweat into this. And so I just want to acknowledge all of her efforts on this project as well.
Yep, good looking out. Director Cummings?
Yeah, so just rounding
Oh,
things out.
Mr. Chairman, I had my hand raised. I don't want you to move on quite
Alderman
yet.
at Large Moran, who is no longer Lisa Moran.
Sorry to cut you off, Director. So I just wanted to go back quickly to talk about the library. Alderman Tebow and I pretty much agree on, I would say, 99% of things. And I don't think he was saying that the library should generate revenue. I think the library is one of the only clear-cut symbols of low-cost and free services that the city provides that is constantly setting up value added to the city. To see any type of library anywhere in the country turn into something that would generate revenue versus minor fees and this and that would be disheartening. And I think the libraries across our country, including the one here in Nashua, are just great symbols of just how awesome government can be, providing low and free cost services. And I hope at some point we can eliminate some of those parking spots so it becomes an absolute access point with being, free.
Thank you, Alderman Moran. Alderman Tebow.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I agree with Alderman Moran. I was not looking to charge for things at the library. I was heading off questions I may get, or any of the other aldermen or alderwomen may get as our constituents hear about these plans, and as we communicate these plans to them. I want to be ready to answer questions. So I believe 100% free, except for Director Cummings and his spare change.
Yeah, thank you.
No one said we can't put Dunkin' Donuts in there. Alderman Cummings? Sorry, de-elected Director Cummings.
We keep trying to make him alderman.
Okay.
Tomorrow night, you got a surprise coming.
So, rounding things out here, we discussed all the miscellaneous municipal capital requests. We had 1.2 million previously approved. That was to for revenue replacement for the prior budget year. For that was meals and whatnot in the school system. We have program support of in total over the 5 or so year period that we'll be using the opera program of about $200,000. This would round out all the various opera requests except for the housing trust fund money, which we've discussed in detail at other times. That totals us to $16.1 million. And if I could, Mr. Chair, I'd like to get a favorable recommendation on this proposal this evening.
All right, well, that's up to the board. Any further questions or comments? Alderman Kelly.
Thank you. I just wanted to thank everyone for coming in and speaking to their specific projects. You were all very thorough in your descriptions of what you want to do with the money. I mean, obviously, I'm a little bit biased in terms of wanting to put a lot of this into the Housing Trust Fund. And when we originally talked about this, we talked about putting a good amount of it in there. I think this is a good compromise. I, of course, would like more in there, but I think it's a good start. And I know you all have very specific needs that are, going year after year. So I'm going to support this, and I appreciate you all coming out and just explaining what was going on. Thanks.
Well, I wanted to add a 14-story emergency shelter, but nobody wants to run it, so. Any other questions? All right, so the motion on the floor is to recommend final passage of the ordinance passage?
Yes. Do you want me to reread the motion
Yeah.
or just take the roll call?
Well, it looks like we're motioning to approve the.
To approve the communications.
Yeah, it's
submitted,
not actually
Okay,
a
so,
ordinance.
motion is to approve the communication.
Yes. I'll do the roll call. Alderwoman at Large Shoshana Kelly.
Yes.
Alderman at Large Melbourne Moran Jr.
Yes.
Alderwoman at Large Gloria Timmons.
Yes.
Alderman Patricia Clee says yes, and Alderman Thomas Lopez.
Yes.
You have 5 yeas.
All right. Then we have accepted that communication.
Yes.
Next on our agenda is general discussion. I know we do still have some pending presentations from the building department and some concerns around housing in general. Were there any other topics that any members of the committee would like me to try to put on future agendas? All right, seeing none. Public comment?
Lori Ortolano, 41 Berkeley Street. You know, I'm here to express some frustration. I am so disgusted with the Economic Development Office and Mr. Cummings and how public information is being handled in this city. I am just beyond maddened by how difficult it is to get access to information and to find out that the Performing Arts Center has really been a public entity, public business. Disclosure is supposed to be there for the public, but it hasn't been for 2 years. And despite my attempts to get these records, I haven't been able to do it. It's just ridiculous. Does anyone in the Economic Development Office know what the right to know law is? I don't have this problem with the Community Development Office and Matt Sullivan. He's super courteous, very responsive, gets back to me in minutes. Tim Cummings, it's a go screw every time, and I am so tired of it. It's just ridiculous. You know, what do you have to do to get a response? He has a website that he can actually post a disclaimer to say he doesn't have to comply with 91A. His office is busy, agendas and minutes won't be posted in a timely manner. How are you supposed to find the meetings? I have been at this more than a year. I'm finally filing a lawsuit this week. 17 charges. There'll be more. I'm sick of the records violations in this city. And my understanding is Attorney Bolton advised him to post in the normal sites. If you don't use the Agenda and Minutes website, how are citizens supposed to know where these meetings are located? And especially when he has over $70 million of this city's money to spend, and he operates it in a closet with the lights off, so the public can't have access. This is absurd. It is just absurd. It's just not right what's going on here. And when I reach out to aldermen, I expect even more from you. I mean, who do I go to? Rich Lannon is the president of the 3 companies that were set up to address the new market tax credit. When I wrote the right to know requests to him, he ignored them. When I asked for records, he ignored it. Tim Cummings' webpage says, if you have questions, contact me, email me. Tim Cummings sent me a letter today to let me know that you asked questions. I don't respond to questions. Oh, do you not respond to my questions? Or do you not respond to anyone's questions? Please take your disingenuous statement off your website and shove it where the sun don't shine, Mr. Cummings.
Ms. Orleano, could you at least imitate decorum while you're having this?
I'm having decorum.
I
And
disagree, and I'm sharing.
well, that's fine, but you don't have the
You're
right.
being blatantly disrespectful to city staff sitting right here. Please wrap up your comments.
I have a right to express myself and my
You don't
frustration.
have a right to be disrespectful to other people.
I'm not being disrespectful.
You're arguing with me, and I'm sharing.
Well,
Can you
it doesn't
please wrap
matter.
up
I
your
have a
comments?
right to open comment and speech, and my frustration is based on the fact that I can't get records unless I file a lawsuit and go to court.
Which you intend to do, we've heard.
I don't want to do that. Why do I have to do
I
that?
started this late, you have 30 seconds.
Why don't you do something to prevent the lawsuits? Why don't you follow your website's rules and put the minutes and the agendas where they belong? Why can't I go to the city clerk's office and ask for records and not be told they're not here and we won't tell you where they are? I've been around on 4 of his projects.
Time is up.
And it never
Ms.
stops.
Laureano, could you please conclude?
I'm done.
Okay, thank you. I would like to apologize for not dismissing city staff before public comment. If you guys would like to leave, feel free. Any further public comment from other members of the community?
There is, Ms. Newell.
Okay. Ms. Newhall?
Thank you. I'm Reverend Sally Newhall, 33 Digital Drive here in Nashua. And you may have addressed this. I was at the Elm Street meeting and I got here a little bit late, but I love that $10 million is being put aside for the Housing Task Force, but it used to be called the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. And I don't know when the change got made. Is it a different purpose for the fund than had originally been thought of? Have you changed the name because you need to change the name for ARPA reasons? It's really just a question. I don't know where to go to get the answer to that.
We did have some conversation on that. I had asked Director Sullivan and Cummings when we were organizing the oversight committee for the Housing Trust Fund. It was stated that that would not accurately describe the fund. It is worth pointing out that the Housing Trust Fund is not exclusively affordable housing. It is development projects that should lead to affordable housing. Director Sullivan, if you'd like to add something.
Thank you, Alderman Lopez. I think you actually were getting to the point that I was going to make, and Reverend Newhall, be happy to follow up with you at another time too, to sort of walk through the conversation that we'd had at prior meetings. But it is possible that use of fund monies could go towards elements of development projects that essentially are intended to create affordable housing, but not fund the units themselves that are affordable. And so I'm happy to discuss that in a little more detail, but there's a bit more nuance, and so we did not narrow the title of the fund down to affordable only, recognizing that there may be development scenarios that necessitate or ask for use of those funds that are not actually the creation of affordable units themselves. So I'd be happy to follow up with you one-on-one.
Great, thank you. I'll be in touch.
And Director Sullivan is chairing the committee that oversees that, with Director Cummings as vice chair, if I got those two correct. Any additional public comment?
I see none online, and there's no one in the GOV any longer.
Okay. Remarks by Alderman. Alderman Clee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I actually wasn't going to have any comment, but after the last rant of the public speaker, I do want to say that I appreciate the honesty and public comment that comes forward, but attacking a city employee, especially someone as hardworking as Director Cummings, is abhorrent. I'm sorry that you had to sit here and listen to such language and such anger and such vile speech. None of our employees should ever have to do it. I agree with what she said about Director Sullivan. He is very good at what he does, as are you, Director Cummings. I thank you. You are very responsive to all of my questions. I'm sure that you are more than responsive. And while people don't like the fact that you don't necessarily answer them immediately, I know that when I've answered you, I've asked questions from you, I may not get a response within the next hour or so. Sometimes it's 1 or 2 business days, but I know it's because you're working on other things. And while I like to think that I am the most important person in this entire room, that is not the way life works. And I appreciate all that you do, and I apologize that you had to listen to such vitriol. Thank you. Thank you for coming to work every single day and doing all that you do.
Thank you.
And same thing to all of our city employees. So.
Alderman at Large Timmons.
Yes, thank you, Alderman Clee. I also agree with her 100%. I see the complaints, and it seem to be from one person. There's a lot of people in this city. We're close to 100,000 people. So what you're doing, you keep doing, because I think you're doing a fantastic job, and I think it's a good team here. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Alderman Moran.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, I don't particularly condone the way that Ms. Orlando addressed the board and Director Cummings. However, she does have a small point, I would say, in regard to those private entities that are taking money from the city. I've been looking into this myself, and there is a strong chance that she will prevail, that those companies do need to provide records as a right-to-know request. My attorney, no, but just from the research I've been doing on this matter, that is something that those companies should be providing. And as an alderman, I would ask that they just provide the information if it's related to public information and public spending. Those entities are not part of the city. They're not overseen by us. They are separate. But after intensive research on my own, I would say that she's not wrong in everything that she's saying in that particular statement. Don't condone the way she did it and how she's approaching the committee and the director, but I believe Mr. Lannon should produce those records.
Okay, and for my part, I apologize to the members of the city staff that are present, and I would remind the public and my fellow aldermen that city staff they're not here because they want to be necessarily. They're here because they're here to serve the city and because they're paid to be and asked to be here to present information. And I take responsibility for asking them for that clarification for the purpose of thank you, Missy, for the purpose of clarifying how ARPA money was being spent. I did not anticipate that they would be berated in this particular manner. So I think we need to keep in mind that not everybody in the room has the same equal amount of power. And while an individual member of the public has rights, I think ethically they have a responsibility to moderate those rights and consider other people in the room as well in the context. I think Ms. Orlando's actions speak for herself, and I think her legal arguments can be heard in court. Alderman Tebow.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to, continue to say what everybody else is saying because it was unfortunate, some of the words she chooses. I mean, she can be mad at any one of us. City employees are a little different. But even if she's mad at them, not happy with the situation, you can't come up here and start berating someone like that. And Director's, I almost said Director Sullivan. Director Sullivan's all set. Director Cummings, is always answering my questions. And, someday we'll have a free library parking project. But I do want to thank him for everything he does. And there was no need for some of the comments that were made. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. I think that concludes our agenda. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
Alderwoman Kelly.
So moved.
Alderman Kelly, was that your motion?
I move to adjourn
Okay.
by roll call.
Oh, I'm sorry, that's me, isn't it? Alderwoman at Large Shoshana Kelly.
Yes.
Alderman at Large Melbourne Moran Jr.
Yes.
Alderwoman at Large Gloria Timmons.
Yes.
Alderman Patricia Clee says yes, and Alderman Thomas Lopez.
Yes.
We have 5 yeas, and we are adjourned at 8:18.